start a YouTube recording here. This past week was amazing. I spent it in Denver at MCon, mostly with Jiho, and I guess it was posted on Twitter. Arctic was there, a longtime community member, Axie44, might be how you know him. And of course, Jiho's wife, Esther. She's also an artist and one of the Axie sisters, so very much involved in the Axie community. And MCon, I think it's the Meta Cartel event. Smaller in scope, but like hundreds of people there. It was in Denver. We were staying in downtown at one of the nice hotels. And I'm not going to lie, man. It was pretty damn cool to finally get to meet one of the Axie co-founders in person and be able to have like water cooler talk. You know, like these moments to just sit there and brainstorm and talk and engage with one another and share ideas and piggyback and take notes and dream big. Like, there were moments at breakfast where we were brainstorming about what Axie could be like 50 years in the future, you know, like thought experiment. Where are we in 10 years? All right, what about 20 years? What about 50 years? You know, like, and not all those thoughts are super useful or like going to come to fruition, obviously, but it is just amazing to have some of that energy in real life. Like, you don't understand how much pent up Axie energy I have. All right. Very few of my real life friends, basically none of them care about Axie. They all think it's cool from like hey, cool, man, glad to see you're slaying it. But they don't really understand Axie or like understand why it's so cool yet. Right? So to finally be in a place where I'm surrounded by other people that love Axies and we can like ogle over mystics and talk about these crazy ideas and, you know, strategize our schedules. And I was supposed to be there for one day. The con was for 3 days. I was originally planning to come on day 2 and just do a day there. Ended up crashing there and staying Friday. And then I stayed Saturday and I did like a half day Sunday. And, it was just great energy, and it helped me really think about Axie on like a much bigger scale and bigger picture. It was really interesting. Like, this is the first Ethereum conference I've ever been to. First like blockchain con. Like, I've not even really been to that many like small scale blockchain meetups. I'm super new to this. I've been to a shit ton of esports events. I know how to talk video games, but I felt like such a noob listening to these people talk about Ethereum and like, I got in at 2013, you know, these, do you remember that thing where we got in at like 1 cent, man? What is it now? 150? Like, you hear those conversations like crazy because these are people that were super bullish on Ethereum and what we're doing now in like 2015, 2016, 2017, you know, they've been in it for a while. They've been in some hard times, but if you've been that sticky and you've just been in the system in any way, since that amount of time has passed, you've probably done okay for yourself, right? You've probably found something that's appreciated to a decent amount. There's been a number of bull runs now where if you've worked on a project that has any kind of utility or usefulness to the ecosystem, you've probably set yourself up for a couple of decent wins. So seeing those people alone is an interesting, great learning experience. And then you add this layer on top of, you know, Axie's kind of exploded recently. And again, 50% of our players are 1.6 or 1.7 million daily active users, whatever the exact number is. 50% of them are brand new to cryptocurrency, aka they didn't really know anything about blockchain or crypto or Bitcoin or Ethereum until they decided, I got to get in on this Axie thing. Fuck it, I'm gonna white knuckle through this and I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna figure it out because I gotta get some Axies. I gotta make some of this SLP money, right? That is wild. And some of these crazy Ethereum bulls, some of them that have worked on really big, serious projects would come up to us and be like, you guys did it, man. You guys made our shit interesting to like more mainstream people. We've been trying to figure out how to do this for like half a decade, man. I don't know how you did it, but you fucking did it. That's awesome, man. You guys are awesome. And that energy was very palpable. And it's not even like some kiss ass kind of like, oh, Jiho energy. It's like that genuine like, dude, you guys are making the whole ship get bigger, man. Like, you got a piece of the pie, but you're making the pie bigger. So my little part of the pie probably going to benefit from all these new users. Like, these are people that think really big picture, you know? It just excited me so much. And it made me really understand that the value proposition of Axie and what we're setting up to do has very quickly outpaced that of just being a video game, right? And I think all of this context is important as we move this conversation into SLP and some more contemporary type parts of the conversation. We're really working on a social movement here. Like, it's that tweet that I sent out yesterday or the day before. Here, we can even pull it up and look at it because some of the responses are sort of funny. I genuinely believe it. Let's see. Here it is. There we go. Maybe we'll zoom in a little bit so it's more bold for you. Look at this. Axie is already so much more than a game, and it's quickly becoming more than a community. Soon, Axie will be an entire society. I actually believe this. This is not just like crazy toxic positivity or whatever people have been trying to claim it is. I really believe this. And while the game that we have now, I think, is exceptional for what it is, an alpha that has been built on this bleeding edge technology and struggled to scale and finally taking these big steps to scale properly, and with Battles version 2 and Land and all this stuff, like, our universe is so incomplete. We're like, when people say stop hiding behind you're an alpha game, I just want to say we're at like 8% of what the universe could be. Of what our planned universe is. What it could be is so much more, right? Because long-term Axie's scaling solution is to have this SDK, that software development kit, right? The map editor. That is the tool set that will allow the community to take this Axie foundation and build Axie games for like every genre. Right? There could be an Axie FPS or an Axie MOBA or whatever else, right? Like, you could open up this IP to build out all these different games that are partially community owned or this community license. Axie as a DAO will like allow the users of the ecosystem to make some of those decisions of what the limits are and who can use the IP and how and when. And as we build out these other games, it might not be Sky Mavis that builds every single game in the Axie ecosystem. In fact, I can guarantee it won't be Sky Mavis that builds every single game in the Axie ecosystem, right? So not even like Axie is already so much more than a game. That is true on so many levels, right? Axie is going to be a platform where other games can be built. That is pretty cool and has very high potential. We have a crazy strong community, but I think when you start looking at, all right, what is Axie's biggest value proposition right now? Like, what makes us so valuable and why are so many people still trying to get into the game, even as SLP has been continuing to decline in value in these super short term, right? There's still a huge amount of player retention. There's still a large amount of new players coming in. There's still a general demand for Axie at large. And we're hearing from a really loud vocal minority, right? Why? Why is Axie so sticky and why are our retention rates so good? And it's because people feel attached to their Axies and they feel attached to this community that they've helped build. And while other games can come in and copy our tokenomics or copy our strategy, or in some cases just try to rip off our IP, what they can't copy is the amount of time that's been spent building this Axie community. And there are a lot of new folks, right? I'm a new person. I've been here for like 6 months. We have a boatload of users. The majority of our users have been here for like 3 or 4 months. So we're all pretty new for the most part. But what makes Axie so different is that we have this backbone of hardcore community members that have been here through thick and thin, and helped build this thing and develop the strategy and get it to where it is now. We can't forget that 3.5 years or something has passed since this thing has launched, and that's one thing other games can't very easily copy and paste. And there are significant scaling solutions that you simply don't face until you get to scale, and they are very hard to prepare for. So I think it's easy to talk a really big game when you're still in this sort of budding pre-launch, pre-alpha stage. But there's a lot going on in the background that we're working to scale and push forward to start this next era of Axie. And there is a lot in the pipeline. There's been a lot in the pipeline for a while. You guys are palpably like, we want some more information. Give it to us. What is it? Sorry. Yeah. Turn that off now. Appreciate you though, Tetsu. Yeah. So anyway, I lost my train of thought there. A lot of scaling in the back end. Just because the servers are working doesn't mean we've finished scaling everything, right? Notice how tournament functionality hasn't come back completely yet. That's because there's still scaling that's going on in that regard. And eventually we want to not have to limit esports to this private server, but open up tournaments for everyone at any time, just like before, and let esports take this very natural sort of organic evolution while we build out what I've been calling Axie Pro League. I don't know if that's actually what we're going to call it, but, this idea of an official league that has qualifiers and regions and, circuit points or whatever, and there's some big finals where it all culminates. And, all that is very much in the pipeline as well. Not this year, right? But 2022, 2023, absolutely, that is part of our model, is to build out this esports league. So, we are truly in the quiet before the storm. I know you guys are tired of hearing that, but when I look at what is Axie long term and talking to all these people this last week at MCon, and speaking really big picture with other people at Sky Mavis, Axie has this crazy potential now. We've got 50% of our users coming into crypto for the first time. That's onboarding a lot of people into the Ethereum ecosystem. Even though we're moving more stuff towards Ronin is an Ethereum clone, right? So we're still like very bullish on the concept of Ethereum and still want to be able to work very easily and have a bridge and let users get their assets off. That's a key part of the value proposition of Axie. So we like Ethereum, no issues there. And there's a lot of alignment of what do all these new users do? They're going to come in and they're going to get used to using cryptocurrency, and they're not only going to ever play Axie, right? Maybe they'll buy other NFTs. Maybe they'll get into art. Maybe they'll play games of other genres. It has a really big implication at large. And then when you also consider that 25% of Axie's players are bankless, we're now starting to onboard people like into finance just in general, right? Individuals that live in like a dark economy where it's all cash run. There's not a lot of reporting. They don't have access to credit. They don't have access to loans. They don't have access to bank accounts even. You're literally storing money like in a shoebox in your room and spending it almost as quickly as you're earning it, allowing those people to tap into these massive financial tools. That is one of the ultimate ways to try to break power dynamics, right? To break the cycle and empower the people that need it the most. And a lot of people have been trying to figure out how to do that en masse. And the only way that we've figured out how to scale it is to activate our users to have this demand to onboard other users, right? Scholarships that start amongst family and friends and that kind of thing. It kind of decentralizes the growth process and all of a sudden becomes very manageable because people have a vested interest to try to teach their friends to onboard them as scholars. It's part of the innovation that we're working on here. That has wild implications, It doesn't take too much of an extension to go, whoa, Axie Bank? Is that actually possible? Like a small Axie credit line for people in developing countries? Is that impossible? Those are like good questions to be asking. Really, really big scale implications. And now this is obviously a little bit down the road, but we'll see. I guess there are some COVID pending aspects. But think about Amazon's business model now. They conquered the online space. At least let's use America as like a vacuum thought experiment here relative to Amazon. All right. They nail the online version. They come up with this crazy cutthroat model that slashes everybody's margins. They start putting physical stores out of business because of their dominance in the digital space. They nail the shipping thing. They find this really efficient way to move things around and put them in these hubs and whatever. Then it clicks. The next step is we need to invade the physical because there's still a demand for some in-person shopping. And what is an Amazon warehouse? It's just a couple of boxes away from having a showcase in a floor room where people can just come buy stuff. So what starts as purely digital, I think you can only remove so much of the human element. Just like we can solve a lot of things with smart contracts, but we can't solve everything with smart contracts, right? There's still parts of the human condition that are complicated and nuanced and not easy to programmatically enforce all rules at all times that are fair to everyone. It's hard to maximize all those with automation sometimes. I think trying to bring Axie into the real world is like a very real concept. We're starting to see that form organically in the Philippines already. I wonder how scalable that is to other parts of the world, right? When you have this revenue stream and this shared connection, right? Like there's this shared goal at the base of this pyramid of like, let's say we have an Axie town on every continent or in every major city or something. And let's say we found some sort of governance or economic model where it all makes sense and there's security and there's food and there's all these other basic things taken care of. And we have this model that we could start stamping for different Axie towns, all driven by the play to earn kind of economic backbone. That's interesting. But then what, right? Like, what do you do once you have Axie towns? Well, then we just have more time to play Axie and develop games and, you know, become humans and connect with each other and have an actual community. I mean, what do most of us want to do if we had unlimited free time? Make stuff and play games. Those are like my number 1 and 2 right there. So I don't know if we're all aligned with that priority list necessarily. But yeah, I like all this stuff. It sounds crazy. But at the same time, does it? You know, like you start really thinking about what is the extension of the implications of what we have here. A fun game, a strong community, a community that's relatively positive and nice, all things equal relative to other gaming communities. We have this great play to earn model that's kind of breaking down barriers, and we're bringing new users into 2 very valuable ecosystems, finance and crypto, blockchain. I don't know. A lot to figure out there, but we're laying the bedrock for really, really big stuff. And that's what I mean when I say soon Axie will be an entire society. I think it has potential to start growing into some of that. You know, I think Khan is asking good questions here. Like, you know, who's going to provide us with like basic needs, health, food, education, all that stuff? Absolutely, man. Those are the questions to be asking, right? But I think governance and economics is like, I don't know. Maybe there's still something to be discovered there, right? Maybe it hasn't all been figured out, and you know, maybe Axie can innovate in a lot of ways. Like maybe land is a proof of concept for governance, right? I've said this a lot of times on multiple podcasts. Like it's really cool to say, "Hey, this system's fucked. Let's make our own system." Okay, let's say we've done it. Now what? What are the rules of this new system? And that's going to be the most interesting part of Axie Town, or land gameplay in Axie, especially once it becomes a DAO. Like, what's the governance model? You know, is it representative democracy? Is it a social democracy? Like, how do we structure our Congress? Is it a parliament? Do we have a mayor? Like, who writes the Constitution? All of this stuff, they're like really big questions that I think will very quickly be super relevant to get answered once that stuff gets launched and it's like fully deployed. I think politics are inevitable, but what if we can figure it out? Like there's a lot of money on the line in this land system, and there's a lot of humans that are really invested in it. So it sort of acts a little bit like this real world simulation of how you could govern a group of people in real life where there's a lot of resources on the line that people really care about. I don't know. Maybe that's a little lofty, and maybe that's way overly optimistic. And I say that, and then the experiment is going to take a nosedive, and the DAO just votes itself into the ground. That would be really unfortunate. But the more I talk to like big AXS holders and people that are actually really interested in what I'm talking about right now, like developing governance models that work for the people, if you have enough big brains that actually have say in the ecosystem, aka AXS holdings that give them a big voting share, I think things start to get really interesting and very philosophical very quickly. And that just excites me. You know, that overall makes me feel like Axie has really, really big potential and much broader implications than version 1 of battles of Axie. And again, I don't want to downplay what we have now, because what we have now is really amazing and it is an innovation. And I love version 1 of battles. I think we have a strikingly good game with, that general principle of it's relatively easy to learn, and it has a really, really high skill cap. It sort of has that poker vibe where it's easy to learn how the game works, but to actually be amazing at the game has a really, really high skill ceiling. And I think we're seeing that with esports, and we are going to have a balance patch coming, but before this, with this next season, there will be a lot more info on that to come. But some changes are going to be made, and I think people will be very excited about some of those changes. And I'm excited to see the evolution of esports and how things will continue to evolve on that front. I think Axie in its current state is still very far ahead of the curve, even though it doesn't feel like it quite at this moment. But I think y'all are going to be super stoked about some of the stuff that's poking in the pipeline. But yeah, I hear you. There's definitely, it's been a while since we've launched something big. And maybe to segue into more contemporary stuff here, I get where some of the energy is coming from. There's a lot of money on the line with Axie. There's a lot of things that are hard to be completely transparent about. I think I remember on the Axie Explained podcast, I said, I don't know what transparency means. And I thought about that a lot, because that was a genuine statement, but one that I want to kind of reconcile a little bit. And I think one of the reasons it's frustrating is because crypto has this strange duality that is both a great weakness and a great strength. Everything's open, right? We don't have black boxes, so you can see what we're building. You can see our code. So everything can be kind of copy and pasted and very subtly tweaked very easily. And this is great for pushing innovations really fast and allowing anyone anonymously to just keep iterating upon what's been built. But it kind of sucks when you're number one and everyone's looking at you of just these guys figured it out. Let's just copy their shit. Everybody's looking at you and trying to pick apart your stuff and looking for holes in the system and trying to break things. And they there's a vested interest in a lot of other parties in seeing us fail. And even in a less negative way, there are a lot of people looking at us for inspiration of hey, I'm working on a crypto game right now. You guys are doing something that's working. I want to try to figure that out. And that's normal, right? That's totally okay, and that's fine. But on our side, that puts a weird incentive to try to keep things pretty close to the vest, right? We don't really benefit that much from leaking details about what we're doing and exactly when. But we do benefit from sort of dropping things oh yeah, here it is, because it gives all of our competitors the least amount of time to start reverse engineering and immediately copying what we're doing. And maybe that sounds a little egotistical, and maybe some of the games have denied that they do that. But it's mostly these bad actor copycat, super anonymous. I don't even want to name them. You guys know who I'm talking about, though. These really egregious, just Axie clone knockoffs. It's not good. That stuff is terrible. And unfortunately, there are limited ways that we can protect ourselves from that. We can't really stop it from happening. We do aggressively file takedowns and work with NFT minting sites and different domains to get rid of things that are just a complete violation of our trademarks and our IP and are just illegal. There's no gray area there. It's just a matter of enforcement. So I want you guys just to keep that in mind, because that is a very real thing that I think we're blazing the way with this technology, and that means rightfully a lot of people are looking at us, and that means there also isn't really a playbook for how to do communications within this space. And it really bugs me when I hear people make those well, this is the way Riot does it, or this is the way Blizzard does it, or even if this regular centralized gaming company can do it this way, then surely you guys can just do that. And I think making that statement really demonstrates the lack of depth of knowledge that you have and the lack of belief and understanding you have in the core technology of what we got here and what we're building. We're purposefully rewriting the playbook because we want to do things differently. We're building from the bottom up and the top down at the same time. And we don't want to copy what the centralized universe has done, nor should we, nor can we in a lot of these kind of situations. So this is just a good example of why it's hard and why when you see all these copycats, like if you could see the takedown reports that I see, you would maybe have a slightly better lens. And maybe that's data that I don't know if we can really share that or if that's useful to share, but a lot of takedowns. There's a lot of phishing scams out there. It's fucking scary. And we are investing a lot of resources in tackling that stuff and trying to get it out of there. But damn, dude, it's a lot of attack vectors. So we got to try to protect ourselves from some of those bad actors out there. Yeah, Khan makes a good point. In the real world, you can just sue them. In the crypto world, it's hard to sue, anonymous people on the internet. So you got to play, in the mud a little bit. Slightly lost my train of thought, but yeah, communication is just a little bit hard. And I think I want to reiterate here that specifically with Axie, the crazy growth spurt that we had to push from like 50,000 daily active users to 1.5 million daily active users over the course of like 2.5 or 3 months, that like seriously broke our stuff. Okay, I've explained this before, but I'm going to explain it again. There's a very common smart up strategy that a lot of tech startups do. You start with kind of MVP style code, you upgrade it slightly after your proof of concept, and you know that there's going to be this whole period of time where you have to refactor this code and scale it for enterprise, but you don't do that out of the gate because you don't really know what works and what doesn't, and you don't need enterprise code when you only have 5,000 users or 10,000 users or whatever it is. So there's a whole roadmap and strategy involved with refactoring code for scaling. And that roadmap that we had made a lot of sense and was very predictable for a pretty long time. Then all of a sudden, the spike was just like actual exponential. And simply put, it broke our shit. And you guys remember that, right? The servers didn't really work for 3 weeks or so. We had to turn off every single feature that wasn't mission critical. That's why we started the esports server to begin with, because all this stuff got turned off and we had no other way to do competitions except for this little private server that is limited access only because the server itself doesn't scale. We had all this on our roadmap and there were other things we wanted to deploy before doing that, but it has still been all hands on deck for the most part, working on scaling solutions. It's obviously become a huge priority, and before this next growth spurt happens, it's going to happen, don't worry, we want to make sure we can handle it. Truly, the worst case scenario for us is growing too quickly to the point that our servers break. We want to avoid that from happening again. And this is a really critical moment where we have to upgrade all of the systems. It just takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. It's very collaborative. It's crossed multiple verticals within our development team. It's just a lot of shit. And our team is doing a really great job. They're ahead of schedule. They've been working their asses off while still developing and working on all these other major deployments that have to come out. The dev team has been working like seriously overtime. So you gotta just trust me on that. You know, I think one of the points in some of the videos that I was watching recently with the FUD that they keep bringing up is the like, I don't believe you. It's like, well, then you don't really believe in Axie. I don't know how somebody can go from, I'm going to be in Axie for the next 5 years and start making content, and within like 2 or 3 months go from that to like, man, these guys say they're working on stuff, but I haven't really seen anything. Do you think they're actually working on stuff? I mean, I know they've been around for 4 years, but you think they're actually going to make that shit? Or do you think they're just like extending this thing a little bit longer so that we all keep buying into it? I don't know, man. It's like, that is some QAnon level conspiracy. Just like, well, you guys never proved that you're actually making version 2 of Battles. So I don't know, dude. I don't know. This is pretty sus. Like, think about how insanely juvenile that sounds. when there's that much community and that much history, and when you're that new to the community. When I was 2 months in, I still felt like I was at the tip of the iceberg of wrapping my brain around Axie's history. At 6 months, I feel like I've got maybe a quarter of it digested. There's a lot of lore here. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of people that have been involved in building this thing for a long time that have a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different things to say about how Axie got to where it started and where it is now. So like, I don't know what like transparent evidence I'm supposed to post about like trust when I say the devs are working on server scaling solutions and our team has limited bandwidth because hiring Solidity developers is hard and there's only so many of them out there, and within that group there's only so many that are a culture fit for Axie, and then within that only so many that are available right now and are like looking to take on a new project. It's just not as simple as snapping your fingers and hiring 50 people. We're doing really hyper specialized cutting edge shit, and we have to invent some of it while we're doing it. So yeah, trust me, guys. We're working on it. The server scaling is ahead of schedule, and I think like before the end of this year, we're not going to have this recurring discussion about when are the servers going to be done and when's this thing going to scale. We're at the tail end, I promise, but you are going to have to trust me a little bit on that, and that's part of the faith here. You know, we are a community, and there are these key moments here at the beginning where you're going to have to trust us a little bit. And I'm sorry about that. The idea is it's very centralized now, and it's going to be more decentralized in the future. We're still in the very centralized phase. So that does come with some moments of trust. I hope you trust us. I really do. We're working as hard as we can. And the people at the highest level have really sacrificed a lot to get Axie to where it is right now. And they couldn't believe in it more. I say that very earnestly. I've spent so much of my esports career trying to find people like this that like work this hard and care this much about a project that has gotten this big. It's a rare thing to find. So I'm still very comfortable, very bullish, you know. I'm still a little bit new, but I'm loving the general direction and the scope of what we're building here. So yeah, I guess I can't deny there's a little bit of trust, but it is just sort of funny to see a new community member kind of come in and demand this sort of like, you know, this way of communicating or doing things when we're discovering how to do things as we're going along. We are making steps hiring, though. We are probably going to announce, I guess, I think we're in like the final stages of paperwork. Our support team is growing. I think we just got approved for like multiple new roles to be added. I'm going to have my first hire starting in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. Esports team employee number 1 after old Zyori. Very, very exciting stuff there. And we are making strides on like the game development side. That's part of why Jiho has been all over the place in North America. He's been doing some recruiting. You know, he's been talking to people that have worked on some seriously cool games. We got in touch with some folks that have done some really, really next level marketing campaigns. So, you know, as we take steps from alpha to beta and then like finally launch of the whole Axie universe, man, 2022 is shaping up to be pretty damn wild. Yep. But it's kind of expected. We do have a lot of new players, and when you're new to crypto and you're new to finance, all of this world moves really fast, and it is genuinely scary. I recognize that, people like myself, I've got a much different risk tolerance than the average person. I look at a 10% swing as, oh, that's no big deal. And, investing in crypto over a long period really does change your perspective on that stuff. And, the average person is much more, I got 5% this year. That's not too bad. ETFs are like a very attractive kind of low risk type equation for the average investor. And, things are volatile, and you can't separate out. We're pretty insulated from the crypto market, but not completely, right? If Bitcoin tanks 15% in one day, AXS and SLP and the others, they will generally follow that. We also trend independently, right? Obviously, AXS has made crazy moves this year. SLP has been all over the place from really low to up to like 30, almost 40 cents. And now we're down at what, 6 or 7? So I've got the chart open over here. I think we're at 6.1. That's crazy volatility for the average person. And I think all of us, right? I think most of the people listening to this podcast right now, we need your help a little bit. Like I'm saying this earnestly. There is like the real prized resource at Sky Mavis is bandwidth right now. And that is like something that we're working on scaling. We are absolutely working on it as best we can, but you got to think of hiring as like, you're taking a step back to make like 3 steps forward. So like to onboard somebody takes a lot of time and effort, and I'm going to spend, a third of my time in the next 2 or 3 weeks onboarding this new person and getting them comfortable and getting them more autonomous, right? So that's going to slow me down in the short term, but once he's able to run more autonomously and take things off my plate, then that'll open me up to work on much more big picture stuff, hire other people, and we build the web out from there, right? So this is that really delicate time where we're not going to grow linearly. We're setting this like HR foundation to start spreading outwards, adding verticals, and all this kind of stuff. So while that's happening, we definitely need your help, right? We need your help in trying to reach and educate, and just reassure and reaffirm a lot of these new users, right? Like we don't want to be aggressive. We don't want to say things like have fun staying poor. We don't really want to say stuff like, well, just sell all your Axies then. On the flip side, I do still believe that Axie isn't for everyone. And if you really can't handle the volatility that comes with blockchain and crypto, then you might want to be a little patient. I'm not saying like give up on Axie completely. I'm saying we're a little too early for you. Come back in 6 months and see if we're, a little more aligned with what you're doing. I think that's a very fair perspective to have. But for those that are invested or they're dedicated or they bought at the all-time high and they haven't survived a bear market before, not just for Axie, but in general, right? Remember your first bear market? Pretty fucking scary. I remember mine. I was shitting nuggets, man. It was awful. I had people around me that were smarter and braver and richer to pat me on the back and hold my hand and be like, it's okay. Just strong hands, sit tight. Here are the reasons why it's going to rebound. This is the kind of stuff that happens. This is the thing that whatever it is, like that is the sense of the community that really helps and really matters. So like we need your help. This is a call to arms. Embrace positivity. Don't get into the toxic positivity, whatever that is. I guess I did that by accident. But just be normal positive and try to reaffirm people like logically and with data like, hey, we're still trending positively. This is sort of a blip. There are things coming. Like try to reaffirm that there has been a lot of good faith and trust from Sky Mavis and Axie Infinity in the past. If you've only been here for 3 months, you've got a pretty warped lens of what Sky Mavis is like, right? Because we've been super busy, all hands on deck. Jeff and Alex have been less visible than ever because they're so underwater with really high level stuff that is hard to disclose publicly. There was like 3 years of them doing all this crazy hands-on community building of like really engaging with people, so much listening, so much feedback, so much of that intertwined in making Axie what it is now. We need your help to echo that message a little bit. We need some amplification. We need you to be the megaphones, man, because our megaphones ain't working right now. We're switching out the batteries, all right? Until we get these things plugged into the amplifier, we need some help. I think that's the most positive way I can say it. I mean, Legend Darcy, toxic positivity is telling someone to buy even though there is no update/charts going down. Yeah, don't be like one of the people that cling so they're just like, there's no update. Like there's what update? What do you want? That we're working on it? That's the update. I just gave you the update. That's such a weird hill to die on of this like, yeah, there's just no communication or updates. You got to be really careful of that gross hyperbole when you say stuff like one of the things that I've heard some YouTubers say is like, I'm just saying what the majority of Axie players feel. It's like, okay, listen, majority means more than 50%. So you're saying that you're echoing the voice of like 1 million people. Axie's got over 2 million weekly active users. So 50% of that, like 1 million people agree with you, and your YouTube video has 20,000 views. I mean, come on, dude. You're that is gross hyperbole, right? That's not the majority. You can say that you're echoing something that thousands of players, sure. A group of players, or like, you can say it from the lens of, this is my opinion and I'm going to back it up with these data points. I think that's a much better approach. But trying to just like sweep these the majority of players agree with me. Yeah, I'd be a little careful with statements like that. You're really trying to speak on behalf of a large group of people that live in like 150 different countries. So they might not be as unified as you think. I'm doing very well. But yeah, I do. I don't know. I'm still mega bullish. I mean, I onboarded one of my Icelandic friends into Axie. I tweeted about it. Right, he bought those Dango collectors Japanese Axies that have the little toothpick in their mouth with some food on it. Looks kind of like a little paintbrush because he's a mouth painter. Thought that was adorable. It's like, dude, this is the perfect set of Axies for you. I recommended buying one of them, and he bought all three, which also made me kind of happy. But yeah, I think collectors' Axies will generally appreciate in value over time. I think they're a pretty safe investment. I think they're pretty scarce, and they're like a cool badge within the ecosystem. There's only like 300 Axies that have Dango in it. So yeah, I don't know. Are you going to flip them for 2x in 2 months? I don't know about that, but will they hold value at the very least? I think so. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even think Japanese parts need to do something to maintain value and be cool over time. I think they're scarce enough, and they look cool enough that they're just valuable aesthetically. So yeah, I think you're right, Wildblade. Like, you got to be empathetic of the situation that people are in, and whether it's financially because they need to support their family, or it's just emotionally because it's scary jumping into like this technology you probably don't understand completely and being reliant on it. That definitely is like a stress creator. And some of those people, I think, when you need to feel bad for them and try to empathize with that state of mind and recognize that some of that negative energy is just like, I was providing for my family and now I'm not. And this thing that was helping me do that is fucking up my shit right now. So I'm really mad about this. And like, we've all been there, right? I've gotten really mad about something and then had an irrational thought and acted on it. And then the next day you wake up and go, I can't believe I did that. I was just so mad that I was seeing red. So try to think about that when you see these folks on Twitter. And even if I try to frame these situations, like, even if you're not going to get credit for instilling the change and you don't change somebody's mind on the spot, that doesn't happen that often. But what you can do is plant some seeds, right? And seeds can manifest and grow and fester over time and lay a foundation for other ideas to take hold, right? If you're debating with somebody on like a really black and white issue, like abortion or like religion or something like that, you're probably not going to change their mind like on the spot. They're just going to be like, you know what, man, you're totally right. I am pro-choice now. Fine, think about that. Wow. Like that doesn't really happen. But I mean, I guess I don't really engage in those conversations very often anymore. But when I do, my only goal is, can I plant a seed to get this person thinking so that they're open-minded to this concept the next time they hear it, right? There's a whole aspect of marketing where it takes like 10 plus impressions for an ad to really take hold and trigger you to buy something, right? Just seeing an ad for the first time often doesn't really trigger somebody to buy something unless they were going to buy it anyway. So I think there's some nuance to that as well when you're trying to educate people or instill an idea or change their mind. It's not all going to happen in one fell swoop, and it's not that often that somebody's going to respond to your tweet. You're like, you know what? Thanks, man. You're totally right. You're exactly right. I had it completely wrong, and you're totally right. Nobody does that, but I think it's still a worthy battle just to try to put positive, like useful information out there, right? Like data driven, like, hey, if you look at this, we're actually not really losing that many players despite this being a bear market for SLP. That is actually a really bullish sign, right? Like the market's bear, but user growth holds steady or user retention holds steady. If both holds, like that's a great sign. But if you've never bought a stock before, you've never looked at a stock graph, you don't have a bank account, you're just used to counting cash money that you keep in your sock drawer, you might not really come to that conclusion, right? This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's so obvious to us because we're the kind of people that are super involved in this stuff. We've probably been buying stocks or various other investments for a while, even before we got into crypto. If you're into crypto, you're kind of used to this idea of watching charts and graphs and trying to come up with a basic set of analytics within yourself. Just like, oh yeah, users stay the same, market goes down, but people keep playing it. Fuck, what happens when the market goes up? Oh shit. Like that's natural if you do this shit all the time. But if you're in your third month of having a bank account, that might not be such an obvious conclusion. So I think that's the kind of framing I try to think about, and I want others to think about, of like, we just need to try to put information out there and reinforce like all the positive metrics, all the positive energy, and all the bullish ideas of why we think Axie is still a great investment long term, even in these kind of bumpy road moments. And like reiterating every time I talk to somebody about like why scaling is hard and why you need people that are a culture fit, and how like there's this big opportunity cost for hiring the wrong people because that just screws up the project even more. So it like kind of has to be slow and strategic. Every time I have that convo with somebody one-on-one, they go, man, that makes perfect sense. You're right. All right, I'll shut up. But until they hear it from like the horse's mouth, or it's like laid out that way, it seems crazy. They're like, you just got $7.5 million. Why don't you just fix your shit? What are you doing? Just hire people. Like that seems like a logical train of thought when you read it on Twitter without the tone. But that's like essentially the dialogue. So once you lay it out, it's hard to counter with like, just do it. I just explained why I can't just do it, man. I'd love to hit the do it button, but in this case, there ain't no do it button. It's hard. It's best to let that, and that's true. You're right. There's a degree of, let people experience the feeling, and it is a litmus test, right? It gives you a spectrum and kind of a scope of how comfortable am I with this? Like if you're a brand new to Axie, if you're listening to this and you've been in for a month and you're shaking in your boots right now, you should genuinely try to assess and ask yourself, is this right for me? Can I handle this amount of risk? And do I believe in the project long term? And I hope you do. And I hope you can stay strong hands and, get somebody to pat you on the back and say, it's okay, I believe too, name your Axies. Maybe that'll help. But if it really is too much stress, if it's not worth it for your mental health, absolutely take a break and come back later. Or wait it out a little bit and things might start to rebound. I think that's also a very likely, a likely course to take place here. There's corrections both ways. We overcorrected up. Now we're kind of overcorrecting down. I don't know. If you believe it's just going to go down forever, I mean, you're a little bit of a lost soul, man. I mean, come on. It's not going to go down forever. Everything's got a floor, man. Come on now. Whew. So, yeah. I think that wraps up most of my thoughts. I actually wanted to watch Bryson's most recent video to his reacting to... I want to react to his reaction video. I wanted to go full meta with it here. So I think that wraps up Axie Tuesday. I'm going to cut it and for the YouTube, but then maybe we'll stick around and watch this video. I think that covered most of the stuff that I wanted to say. Stay tuned. Obviously, we've been quiet recently, so that generally means that something is close. Let me put it that way. So we've been teasing the decks for a while. That's also close. There's been a lot of teasing. It's exciting times. It really is. It's super exciting times. I wish I could say more, but there you go. That's where I'll leave you.